What did we learn from the Fed yesterday? I lost $10,000 yesterday. We were up 5,000, just like we're up about 6,000 a day to start, and then we lost 10,000 at the end of the day. What did we learn? Well, we learned that they're done raising rates. So they're going to raise rates one more time this year and keep the restricted level at about 5.1%, which is really positive. I was celebrating when I heard that. Next year, 4.4 restrictive rate, and 2025, 3% will be the Fed funds rate. So that means 2024 will have to be a year of cutting. There could be a rate cut this year, but the Fed said that that's off the table, which to me was a good sign. That means that we're not doing badly enough to need a rate cut. So he left that door open for, we're still going strong. We don't need a rate cut. He didn't say we're going strong. He just said we're not factoring in rate cuts if things get worse with the banks this year, which again told me that that was a sign of strength. The other thing he said was the banks will take care of the next rate hike. So instead of them raising rates, they're going to let the banks tighten their lending conditions, and that will be a form of a rate hike. So to me, I added more margin when I heard that, because if rates are coming down and the banks are going to take care of the tightening and not the Fed raising the rates, then my margin rates stay low. So I also think that that's not a true statement entirely. I think some banks will make it harder for people to get loans, but other banks who are competitive will still want to make those loans. So I think that people will still get loans. I don't think that you need loans the same way that you needed loans before when you look at the well-capitalized companies of the S&P. Things like Apple, Microsoft, Google, these are rallying in the face of these reports from the Fed because they are disinflationary, and they don't need banks to get their growth. They don't need bank loans. They have strong balance sheets. So and that's why the big tech will get stronger, and smaller tech could struggle because they can't get the loans from an SVB like they could. So they're going to get that market share. And also the big banks will just get bigger as the regional banks struggle. And another point about regional banks is the Fed said that they're doing fine. SVB was an outlier. This is not contagious. I've been saying this in past videos. Now, a lot of them do hold commercial mortgage real estate. But on the announcement yesterday, the Fed, when he was speaking during the press conference, he said that the regional banks are well capitalized, and SVB was an outlier, and commercial real estate was not going to be a problem. And you always have to trust the Fed. You cannot fight the Fed. I heard a statistic today saying that 70% of commercial bank exposure is owned by regional banks. Maybe that's true, but not all the regional banks are the same, is my point. SVB was an outlier. First Republic, Signature Bank, these guys had either too many bonds, they were going to be held to maturity, and had to sell for a loss if they were forced to raise capital early, or they had too many growth stocks on their balance sheets that were exhibiting a big loss, and so they played with their leverage too much. And also, when they got these bonds at these 4 and 5% interest rates from the government, they didn't hedge. Many other banks are hedged with their interest rates. So every point I'm making, I don't know if you've seen that show Around the Horn on ESPN, but every time they have a factual statement, they get a point. And I hope I'm getting a lot of points with you guys. Another point that's a fact that Fed Powell said yesterday, Fed Chairman Powell said, was that disinflation is still occurring. He also said that, which is great, all right? He also said housing is almost half of the PCE, which we know, and that the other half, and that has come down a lot, he said, and the other half is our services, and those are still seeing some inflation pressure. But he said those could be alleviated with more jobs or just less demand from the consumer. So when you have strong housing and strong cars, that's just people want houses, people need cars, and there's a strength of the consumer in that. So you can't raise rates on them and force them to not have a house or drive someplace. They need these, they have to have them. So actually, I heard an interesting caveat yesterday saying that you don't need to lose the jobs, the Fed said, to to create less inflation. You can just have demand soften on these higher priced items, like I just said, housing, cars. You can just have demand soften, or they simply find more labor because we're still trying to hire out of the pandemic, at certain restaurants and certain hotels. So if you can just find that labor, then costs go down for the employees. They charge the consumer less. It's disinflationary if you can find more work, because then you don't have to compete with other workers and raise wages. So your problem will be solved there by raising wages if you just find more workers. And you could find more workers if you just simply give the system more time, people more time to find these workers, or consumer demand softens some, which doesn't show any signs of letting up because unemployment is strong. If employment is around 3%, and the economy is 70% consumer driven, then you're going to have strong GDP no matter what happens to the banks or commercial real estate. No matter what happens, if we all have jobs, then we're all consuming, and GDP is 70% consumer driven, I say again. So I thought that was interesting. You don't need to lose the jobs or have pain in order for us to drop inflation. We can just simply soften demand or find more labor, and that will ease the supply chain equation of the PCE deflator, which is what the Fed uses to measure inflation. Housing is already coming down. They just need this last equation to be part of the equation to be fulfilled, and we might get that if we just simply let time do its job. Okay, another point that the Fed made was that, I'm going through my list here. 5.1 would be the restrictive rate for the year again. So if people are thinking that we're going to 6 or even 7, well, that's been taken off the table now. And you can't fight the Fed. You can't keep saying that they're wrong on every turn. Okay, so even if they're wrong at 5.1 and we meet somewhere in the middle, 5.5, that's what I've been saying all years, that what we would get is somewhere in the middle between 5 and 6. So that's not terribly bearish. 5 to 6 interest rates, 5% interest rates in a bull market can be done. Look at past history. 5% interest rates can sustain a bull market. So, and that's 5% is nothing compared to historical averages of when interest rates used to be over 10%, almost 20%. The Fed also said that a soft landing still exists. So a soft landing pathway still exists. I found that to be incredibly positive, yet the market was just selling off in the face of this. They won't cut rates if things get worse, which I already said is a sign of strength. Deposit outflow stabilized. The only thing that messed with this whole report yesterday was Janet Yellen's comments saying that these implicit guarantees for the bailouts of the banks weren't enough. But she couldn't say that she would do it for everyone without the help of Congress. So she was just acting within her powers, I believe, and a lot of others believe, and she was just saying what she could say, which was, we'll do a mass FDIC insured program for the banks, but it has to be done through Congress. So for now, we're just going one for one, case by case. I don't see any problem with that. Employment, I'm reading my notes here. Employment, again, should rise to 4, but that's still good. 4% employment is still excellent, and that would alleviate our supply chain issues there too. Well, not supply chain, but that would alleviate inflation. If people are spending less, prices will go down because there's less jobs. But I don't think we're going to get to 4%. Every time you lose a job, you get snagged up by somebody else. So I think the economy is just on fire. GDP was revised down from 1.6 to 1.2 by the Fed. That's not a recession. They did this last year too. I remember GDP was revised down and we're still positive. Recession is negative GDP. So if we're still going from 1.6 to 1.2, where's the recession? So I took yesterday as all systems go. Buy. I added to my margin. You see my margin here? 271,000 in margin. We were just at 230. So I added 40K of margin. Okay, let's refresh the market and see what it's doing right now, because we're just up 6. And these few minutes out of the gate are important. So 7,500. So we're not giving back these gains so far. Now, I could reduce some of my short because I added to some triples yesterday, TQQ and UPRO. And then by the same virtue, I added to my shorts here. SQQ and SPXU, I added 2,000 each of those. So we have we're increasing our exposure with the triples, but we're also increasing our hedge exposure to be safe. And then I also piled in back into bonds yesterday, because when you see that the Fed's not raising rates anymore, and this is their last, they're going to only have one more raise, this is bullish for bonds. Plus, when the economy is slowing, you want to go to safety. So when rates are falling and the economy is slowing, this is perfect for bonds. So I added to GOF yesterday, which also has some equity exposure, but GOF is up, let's see, 0.5% today. I also added to RIV again and OP. So I'll probably even add a little more to OP today on any further weakness to get that back up to 10. All those positions that we cut in half from SVB issues, we cut them in half from 10 to 5. We're building them back up to 10 again. Not all of them, actually, just the highest quality plays. Some of these others like PFFA, who have leverage, AMZA, they use leverage, and I don't know where they get their loans from. So I'm staying underweight in those, and they're also sector specific in a way. So I'm staying underweight, and let's say a raw for real estate, or preferred for PFFA, or EXG for global growth. That's slowing. Also, you saw the Bank of England today raised interest rates. So I don't know if the world's slowing, but I know that China's not doing great right this second, and I just don't feel like having any extra risk that I don't need. So I just concentrated all my capital into mainly index thematic plays. So all of these that you see up top are indexes, S&P 500 and NASDAQ, with only a couple of bond holdings, GOF, RIV. Those are 4 and 5 star funds, though, on Morningstar. All these other funds that I own are about 4 and 5 star on Morningstar as well. So, of course, I consolidated in the higher quality names and index related names. I don't want any sector specific issues. I don't want any leverage issues. I told you for the longest time, UPRO and TQQ are leveraged, but they don't take loans like an AMZA does, who uses leverage to buy oil and gas assets. I don't know, I guess they use the loan from their own equity or from another bank. I don't want to be concerned with it. I'm still keeping it, though, because you still need to have commodity exposure, and this is a tax-free vehicle, AMZA. Another thing I did was I took down our exposure from FAS from 2000 to 15, and I kept the short at 5. So 15 to 5, that means if we lose 50% on the banks, I lose, I don't lose anything. I break even. The 15, if we lose 50%, I lose about 700, but my short goes up 100% and I make 500. So I lose $200 in the process if we just were to collapse from here. But if we go higher, the 1500 could potentially turn to 3000 on a double, and the short would reduce to 0, and I'd lose only 500. So it's a way to not lose any money going down, but to make a decent amount of money going up. I just don't put all my money in it. I only have 1500 in these sector specific triples, because they don't pay dividends, and they have high maintenance, so they suck up a lot of equity. We've made videos on maintenance before. We like 30% maintenance names like Cornerstone and all these, not 100% maintenance like these triple longs, but we still want to have diversification. And I also have a FOMO problem, so I don't like to see banks rallying and I'm not having any part of it, or let's say tech, certain isolated parts of tech or mid caps. So I bought the mid caps, and Soxel here, semiconductors, AI. A lot of people are saying how AI is so disinflationary, and it's gonna really help bring up productivity in the next few years, which should lower inflation and boost the economy, as more companies beat bottom lines with the help of AI. It's the last point I wanted to make, actually, if we circle back to the macro stuff I was mentioning. Company earnings are still going to be engineered for strong EPS. Look at yesterday. We had KBR blew out estimates from 145 115 expected to 145 actual. All these guys are either buying back shares as well, like Norfolk Southern, who's getting a lot of heat right now for all their accidents, yet they're buying back shares still. I mean, so this is strong for EPS. FedEx, same thing, strong report. So I want to take you into the S&P 500. We're in the chart, and I want to zoom in and show you that I think yesterday's reason for the whole decline into the close was not even Janet Yellen's comments. It was the fact that we're up against the 200-day moving average, this orange line. Whenever you see this orange line in play, there's going to be a lot of volatility around it. We're making perfect higher highs and higher lows, and we opened up on the black line here, the 9-day moving average. We opened up on it, and which is a nice sign. We didn't open up at 390 or just immediately plummet to 380, because I gotta wonder, where is all the negativity coming from? I mean, look, now the Fed is not going to raise rates, so you can't say that they're going to send us into a recession because they're raising rates too much. So now the only other argument that the bears have, which the market's going up, and I think that they see that there is no argument. The only other argument is, well, the contagion from SVB will hurt other banks, but I disagree, because those were outliers. They were tech banks and going for risky practices and growth names that other banks don't do, and they're not hedged on interest rates, which other banks are. And also, I think competitive banks will still lend out and fill that void of a hole in the lending. But again, so if the banks fall, if the banks don't lend out as much money, again, the companies will be okay. Look at the top companies in the S&P, the tech companies like Apple, I just already alluded to. They don't need the bank's loans to do things. So if you look at the companies in the S&P, not Main Street, but Wall Street, they don't need the loans, and the banks will still deal with them. They're not going to just stop activity on a dime. They're going to still lend, but they're just not going to do it with the riskier parties that they used to. And speaking of that, 2008, when they lended to riskier parties with the subprime mortgage crisis, a lot of banks were doing that and were over levered to riskier counterparties. This is not what banks are doing now. They're way more capitalized than they were in 2008. This was an outlier. This is not a contagion effect. You can't run on banks when they have multi-asset layered protection like a JP Morgan. How are you going to run on that bank? Also, when people run on the banks, what are they going to do? They're going to just hold the money in their house? I mean, this isn't the 30s. You can't just keep the money in a wheelbarrow. You have to put it somewhere. Everyone knows it's safer in a bank, so it just gets transferred from one bank to another. So if interest rates are coming down, I say again, then what is the risk to the market, and why wouldn't the economy start growing now? Oh, because the banks will tighten lending. Okay, I just described how they won't probably, but even if they did reduce lending some, okay, so what? We take GDP from 1.6 to 1.2. So what? The consumer doesn't buy a house this year. He waits till next year to buy a house. That would be good for prices. That would make prices come down. So then what would happen to GDP if they didn't buy that house? Would it be still stimulative? Would we still have strong GDP? Yes, GDP is 70% consumer driven. If they have a job, which that's the part of the equation that people don't want to stick with here and focus on. If they have jobs, they will keep consuming. If they keep consuming, then GDP stays strong. So I think commercial real estate is like 1% of that number. Yesterday we were up 9%. We're only up 7% now as we took a big dive into the close yesterday. But hopefully, like I said, we're going to get this performance back by the end of the day. This will update at the end of the day. So whatever we're up today, 1.26 versus the markets. Let's see, 0.75 for the S&P, NASDAQ 1.18, and Dow 0.7. So we're beating all the indices. This is what we want to see. We could quickly go look at the breadth of the market and see which is sticking out in particular. So the indexes, cornerstone, of this 7,500 that we're up, 5,000 is cornerstone, as you can see here. So most of this is index related. The tech is taking off, TQQ up 4%, but that's a triple. So let me look at other things within here. Is there anything else? Fangu up 7.5. So tech is definitely the beneficiary play today. Soxel up 7, tech will up 4. Also, we have our sold puts down here, which we don't need to really pay attention to for right now. But QYLD up 100, so that's another tech play. TQQ tech. Yen is China 150. So So energy down today. This is just the breadth of the market in general. By the way, energy, that's another one. Oh, let's talk about that. Energy prices falling below 70 a barrel the other day. People thought that's indicative of a recession. Well, now we're back up over 70 a barrel. So what happened to that argument about going into a recession if that's the indicator? Prices of oil, we're back over 70. So where's the recession? Oh, it's coming from the banks. Once again, that's all you are going to say. That's all you have. We're coming from the banks. But look, the market's been down 20% from the highs for over a year now. You can't stay in this path forever. I showed you that chart of the S&P. We're up against the 200. I think that's all this is. But also, if you look at the Russell or the S&P, go take the last few years of gains and divide it by the last 20 years of gains. Okay, look at the Russell. Look at the S&P. People think that we need to go back to pre-corona highs before we can set a bottom in. I showed you in past videos we already reached pre-corona highs. Okay, and then if you think that that's not enough, that we reach pre-corona highs, just look at the annual return of the S&P per year. It's 7% per year. So if you factor in dividends, maybe make it 9%. So look at the S&P over the last 20 years, divide it by 10%, and you'll see that we're right where we should be. We're right in line with historical averages. So I think that from a money manager standpoint, from a discipline standpoint, from a long-term investing standpoint, you have to add to deal with the averages of 7% a year. You have to add constantly to stay up, to keep your performance in line, and to keep growing your wealth over time. So we're just right in line with where you should be adding to prices, off 20% from the highs. We're basing around the 200-day moving average. Growth is coming back because rates are getting cut or being more dovish now. You see tech coming back, and they're also really cheap. Look at the tech stocks. Just they're way off their highs. So I just see nothing but good in the market. I see nothing but positivity. Before I saw the good constantly as a bullish investor and a long-term investor, but I saw the headwinds as well. The Ukraine war, inflation, raising rates. But now the Ukraine war is it's becoming just another Middle East war, another just drawn out war that no one pays attention to. Remember, if we have World War III, then all bets are off. The whole world ends anyway. Who cares about investing? So it's the ultimate balk, or the ultimate bluff to bet against the Ukraine war. Inflation, it is coming down. Interest rates not rising anymore. So what's the last argument the bears are holding on to? Again, it's this SVB contagion, which I don't think is a thing. The Fed said it was an outlier yesterday, and I also believe it. And then they will restrict lending. Well, I think that we don't need lending in the same way that we needed lending in the 70s. These companies are very well capitalized. The consumer can just wait another year to buy his house or his car. If he has to do it, so be it. And that's why GDP is remaining strong. That's why prices of houses are remaining strong. This is just a good thing. I mean, not good that housing prices are strong, but it's good that there's strong demand and people have jobs and the economy is just moving. Inflation's a good thing. You just don't want too much or too little. So everything is seeming to be Goldilocks now and perfect. Let me know what you think in the description below, in the comment section below. I've showed you what we've done as a result of the SVB fallout, and then now. And we reduce a lot of leverage and things, but now that the Fed is cutting rates, essentially, or the banking system is going to do it for them. Now I'm getting back into bonds and things, and so our income's back over $100,000 a year. So I'm taking this as an extremely positive sign. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.